The emergency call came from Millbrook Valley at 6:30 a.m. Our doctor is missing, and his family too. Dr. Michael Brennan had vanished overnight with his wife, Sarah, and children, Tommy and Lisa. The town panicked. He was their only physician for 50 miles. For 40 years, they mourned their lost doctor. Until 2024, when demolition crews broke through his clinic floor and found an underground laboratory filled with human experimentation equipment. The beloved town doctor had been using his patients as test subjects, and his disappearance wasn't a tragedy. It was an escape from the horrific truth about to be exposed. March 9th, 1984, 6:30 a.m. The emergency call from Millbrook Valley rang through Pennsylvania State Police headquarters. Our doctor is missing, and so is his family. Millbrook Valley was a small town of 2,400 people nestled in Pennsylvania's mountainous regions. The town's only doctor, Michael Brennan, had vanished overnight, along with his wife Sarah and children Tommy and Lisa. This wasn't just a family loss. Millbrook Valley's lifeline had been severed. Dr. Brennan was the only physician within 50 miles, and his absence threw the townspeople into panic. Dr. Michael Brennan was 42 years old and had served Millbrook Valley for 15 years. After graduating from Pittsburgh Medical School in 1969, he had rejected lucrative offers from big cities to serve in a small town. "I want to work where people really need me," he had said at the time. But the truth was far different. Dr. Brennan had been a controversial student even in medical school. He had a personality that constantly raised questions in ethics classes and showed excessive interest in human experimentation. His professors described him as brilliant but dangerous. Even his graduation thesis was about experimental studies to be conducted on human subjects. The medical school administration had only accepted this thesis after heavy censorship. Brennan's true personality had begun to form during his university years. In 1965, as a third-year student at Pittsburgh Medical School, he had secretly conducted unauthorized experiments on patients working in the hospital's psychiatry department. When these experiments were discovered, he received serious disciplinary action, but was saved from expulsion due to his high academic performance. This incident wasn't a warning for him. It was a lesson to be more careful. After graduation, Dr. Brennan began working at various pharmaceutical companies. His first job was as a clinical researcher at Pfizer. Here, too, his obsession with human experimentation continued. He was fired after 2 years for trying to conduct unauthorized experiments within the company. He was later dismissed from major firms like Johnson & Johnson, Merck, and Bristol-Myers for similar reasons. By 1975, no major pharmaceutical company would hire him. It was precisely at this point that the Millbrook Valley option emerged. The town's old doctor, Dr. Harold Wilson, had retired, and they were looking for someone to replace him. When Dr. Brennan applied, the town council saw him as a qualified doctor with big city experience. Unaware of his past problems, the townspeople welcomed him with great enthusiasm. For Dr. Brennan, Millbrook Valley was the perfect laboratory, isolated, free from outside interference, an ideal environment where no one would suspect him. The Brennan Medical Clinic was located right in the center of Main Street in a 2-story brick building. The first floor was the clinic, and the second floor served as the family's home. But the real laboratory was where neither existed, in the secret room beneath the basement. Dr. Brennan's first task after acquiring the clinic was to set up the secret laboratory. Months of secret construction work were carried out at night, and no one was informed of this room's existence. Sarah Brennan was 39 years old, formerly a nurse who worked in her husband's clinic. Initially, Sarah was unaware of her husband's work, but gradually began to realize the truth. In 1978, she first understood that the medications Dr. Brennan gave to his patients were not normal. When she discussed this with her husband, Dr. Brennan told her these were sacrifices made in the name of science. Sarah initially objected, but gradually fell under her husband's manipulation. She chose to remain silent for the safety of their children, Tommy and Lisa. Tommy was 12, and Lisa was 9 years old. Both attended the local elementary school and were popular children in town. The children were unaware of their father's true activities, but sensed the tense atmosphere at home. Tommy especially noticed his father going up and down to the basement at night and found this strange. Lisa saw her mother crying frequently, but couldn't understand why. On the evening of March 8, 1984, at 9 p.m., Dr. Brennan examined his last patient. Betty Morrison, 65 years old, was a woman with chronic arthritis problems. But the medication doctor Brennan gave her wasn't arthritis medicine. It was an experimental compound he had developed in his secret laboratory. After Betty Morrison took this medication, she experienced hallucinations for 2 days and speech disorders. Her family attributed this condition to temporary discomfort caused by old age. The truth was very different. Betty Morrison was Dr. Brennan's final experimental victim. Tom Rodriguez, the town's postmaster, was passing by the clinic at 6 a.m. on March 9th on his way to work. It was customary to see Dr. Brennan's blue Buick every morning, but that morning the car wasn't there. He found it strange, but didn't think much of it. Dr. Brennan sometimes left home for nighttime emergencies. At 6:30 a.m., Sarah Morrison, Betty's daughter, came to check on her mother and found the clinic door locked. This wasn't normal at all. Dr. Brennan always opened the clinic at 6 a.m. according to the town's schedule. Sarah Morrison frantically knocked on the clinic door and called to the house upstairs. No response came. She went around to the backyard and looked through the kitchen window. The house was empty and silent. The Brennan family was gone. Gripped by fear, Sarah immediately called the town's other important people. Tom Rodriguez had the clinic building's spare key, which doctor Brennan had given him for emergencies. Rodriguez immediately came and they entered the clinic together. The clinic was orderly and clean as always. Dr. Brennan's desk had patient files left from the previous day, and they saw Betty Morrison's name. The operating room was clean and ready. The medication cabinets were orderly. Nothing seemed missing. On the examination table was a box of arthritis medicine left by Betty Morrison. There were no signs of chaos or struggle anywhere. When they went upstairs to the house, the situation was the same. Bedrooms were orderly. Kitchen was clean. Nothing was missing. The Brennan family's belongings were in place. No suitcases were packed. No departure preparations had been made. Tommy's school bag was on the table. Lisa's toys were scattered in the living room. In the kitchen was an evening meal that had been prepared but not eaten. Everything seemed frozen in the middle of a normal evening. Only the family members were missing. Rodriguez immediately called the Pennsylvania State Police. There was no police station in Millbrook Valley. Security was entirely the responsibility of the state police. Trooper James Mitchell arrived in town about an hour later and began assessing the situation. Mitchell was an experienced officer with 30 years of police experience, but he had never encountered such a case before. The disappearance of the Brennan family was a disaster for the town. Dr. Brennan wasn't just a doctor. He was the town's life insurance. In the initial investigation phase, Trooper Mitchell examined the clinic in detail. Dr. Brennan's patient records were meticulously reviewed. A detailed list was compiled of patients treated in the last 3 months. Medication stocks were checked to try to determine which medications were missing. Financial records were examined to investigate whether Dr. Brennan had any debts. Everything seemed normal. Dr. Brennan presented a profile of an orderly doctor and good family man. In interviews with townspeople, everyone said the same thing. Doctor. Brennan was a perfect doctor. Sarah was a wonderful nurse. The children were well-raised, respectful young people. The family had no known problems. They had no debts, enemies, or quarrels. Their relationships with townspeople were excellent. Everyone loved and respected them. When the investigation was expanded, the emerging details became even more mysterious. The Brennan family's bank accounts hadn't been touched. They had $25,000 in their accounts at First National Bank of Johnstown, none of which had been withdrawn. Dr. Brennan's credit cards hadn't been used. The family's Buick electric car was also missing, but their second car, Sarah's Honda Civic, was still in the garage. The family must have gone somewhere with their own vehicle, but where? No relatives or friends had heard from them. Medical school friends from Pittsburgh, Sarah's nursing school friends, even distant relatives hadn't been in contact with them. The Brennan family seemed to have been erased from the world. This situation worried Trooper Mitchell even more. In voluntary disappearance cases, there were usually some clues: withdrawn money, contacted people, preparation signs, but in the Brennan case, none of these existed. The FBI took over the case on the third day. Special Agent Robert Chen came from the Philadelphia Federal Regional Office. Chen was an expert in missing persons cases with 20 years of FBI experience. He classified the Brennan case as a potential kidnapping incident, perhaps one of Dr. Brennan's patients had had negative results, and patient relatives might have wanted revenge. This theory seemed logical because rural doctors could sometimes be subjected to the anger of patient relatives. Chen's team visited all the patients Dr. Brennan had treated in the last 6 months one by one. Cases with negative outcomes and families complaining of medical errors were investigated, but nothing was found. Dr. Brennan's patients were satisfied with him. Failed cases were below normal. No one had ill intentions toward Dr. Brennan. The townspeople voluntarily participated in search efforts. Forest areas around Millbrook Valley, old mine tunnels, abandoned farm buildings were searched meter by meter. The Pennsylvania State Police provided helicopter support. K-9 units were brought in. Bloodhounds tried to track the Brennan family's scent. Dr. Brennan's blue Buick's license plate was reported to all state police vehicles. Nothing was found. The Brennan family seemed to have vanished into thin air. The media covered the case extensively. Stories titled "Pennsylvania's Missing Doctor Family" appeared in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Philadelphia Inquirer, and all state media. Dr. Brennan's photo was shown on television channels and announced on radio stations. He was added to America's Most Wanted list. Thousands of tips began coming in, but none proved true. They were claimed to be seen at a gas station in Ohio, said to be staying at a motel in Virginia, even reported walking on a beach in Florida. Every tip was checked individually, but none were confirmed. As months passed, hopes began to diminish. The FBI was preparing to move the file from active investigation to cold case category. The Brennan case was beginning to take its place among unsolved mysterious disappearances. Trooper Mitchell continued to investigate the case, but he had no new leads left. Millbrook Valley felt Dr. Brennan's absence heavily. The nearest doctor was 60 miles away in Johnstown. Even for simple ailments, townspeople had to travel long distances. Ambulance service wasn't sufficient for emergencies. Patient transport was often delayed. Within the first year, 2 people, elderly James Wheeler and pregnant Mrs. Patricia Taylor, lost their lives in situations that could have been saved if Dr. Brennan had been there. In 1985, the Pennsylvania Department of Health tried to assign a new doctor to Millbrook Valley. Dr. Janet Wheeler volunteered to come from Pittsburgh, but could only last 6 months. The townspeople constantly compared her to Dr. Brennan expected service at his level and discussed what Dr. Brennan would do in every situation. Living with Dr. Brennan's ghost in this town is very difficult, Wheeler said when leaving. Everyone expects him to return, seeing me as a temporary solution. Dr. Richard Hayes came in 1987 and stayed 2 years. Dr. Margaret Stone was assigned in 1989 and lasted 18 months. Every doctor faced the same problem. Dr. Brennan's shadow. The townspeople continued to believe he would return. The thought, one day he'll walk through the door and say, "I'm back," was widespread in town. By the 1990s, the Brennan case was slowly beginning to be forgotten. Millbrook Valley was trying to continue its life with new doctors. Dr. Brennan's clinic remained closed. The town council didn't know what to do with the building. No one wanted to buy or rent that building. The building gradually began to deteriorate. Water leaked from the roof, windows cracked, paint peeled. In the 2000s, Millbrook Valley underwent major demographic change. The young generation migrated to big cities due to unemployment and lack of opportunities. The town's population dropped rapidly. By 2010, 1,500 people remained. Old buildings were abandoned, shops closed, and the school faced the threat of closure due to student shortage. Dr. Brennan's old clinic also became one of these abandoned buildings. In 2020, Millbrook Valley received a comprehensive renewal project from the Pennsylvania Economic Development Authority. The aim was to make the town an outdoor tourism center. Pennsylvania's mountainous region's natural beauties would be highlighted, old buildings would be demolished, and modern tourist facilities would be built. Dr. Brennan's old clinic was among the first buildings on the demolition list. Miller Construction Company was hired for the demolition process. Company owner Dave Miller was born in Millbrook Valley and knew Dr. Brennan very well as a child. "Dr. Brennan saved me from polio when I was 8 years old," Miller had said. "He was my childhood hero." It was very difficult for me to demolish the clinic, but it was a necessary step for the town's future. Demolition work began in June 2024. In the first phase, the upper floor of the building, the part where the Brennan family lived, was demolished. Workers found old belongings, furniture, personal items, but nothing was unusual. In July, demolition of the clinic section began. Old medical equipment, tables, chairs were removed. In August, when they descended to the basement, an unexpected discovery was made. Dave Miller heard a hard sound while breaking the basement wall with an electric breaker. His breaker had hit a metal surface. When he cleaned the rubble, a thick steel door emerged. The door was rusted but solid, heavy industrial type. It had "Authorized Personnel Only" written on it. Miller initially thought this might be an old shelter or coal storage. Old buildings in Pennsylvania usually contain such storage areas. Opening the door took some time. The hinges were rusted. The locking mechanism was stuck. Miller and his team forced the door open using crowbars and levers. The smell that emanated from behind the door surprised Miller. Chemical odors, formaldehyde, medical antiseptics. This was definitely not a coal storage. When Miller looked inside with a flashlight, the scene that greeted him shocked him. Behind the door was a large underground room of about 100 square meters. The ceiling was low, but the area was spacious, professionally constructed. Operating tables, medical monitors, IV stands, chemical solution tanks, metal shelves on the walls, filing cabinets, glass jars containing unidentifiable substances. In the corner of the room stood a large, deep freezer. Miller immediately stopped work and called the police. Pennsylvania State Police Detective Lisa Chang arrived at the scene about 2 hours later. Chang also realized upon seeing the secret room that this wasn't just an abandoned medical area. This was a secret laboratory requiring organization and professional equipment. She immediately notified the FBI. Special Agent Michael Rodriguez came from Pittsburgh with his team. Rodriguez had been investigating medical crimes, illegal drug experiments, and human experimentation cases for 20 years. But Dr. Brennan's secret laboratory was the most sophisticated, most detailed facility he had ever seen. When the laboratory was systematically examined, The emerging picture was horrifying. Dr. Brennan wasn't just the town's beloved doctor. He was also a mad scientist conducting illegal, unethical research on human subjects. Hundreds of patient files were found in metal cabinets, but these weren't normal medical records. They were experiment records, test results, files labeled subject. Dr. Brennan used his patients as experimental subjects without their knowledge. He tested new drugs, vaccines, even psychologically active substances he developed in his own laboratory on patients. He recorded each patient's reactions, observed side effects, filed and archived results. Some experiments had resulted in death, but Dr. Brennan had recorded these as necessary losses in the name of science. The most shocking files were Dr. Brennan's experiments on children. He injected special experimental substances into babies born in Millbrook Valley while pretending to give routine vaccinations. He used growth hormones, chemicals that caused behavioral changes, even substances that affected mental development. Most of these children had experienced various developmental problems in adulthood. Many couldn't lead normal lives, and some had died at an early age. The FBI rapidly expanded the investigation. Dr. Brennan's medical school records, post-graduation work history, published articles, and connections with other researchers were examined in detail. The emerging picture was even more horrifying. Dr. Brennan had tried to conduct similar experiments while at Pittsburgh Medical School. His professors described him as a talented but unethical, dangerously inclined student. According to medical school records, Dr. Brennan had tried to conduct secret human experiments in his third year. He had tested chemical substances he developed on patients in the psychiatry department. When this situation was discovered, he received serious disciplinary action and was threatened with expulsion from school. He was only able to receive his diploma thanks to his high academic performance and his professor's mediation. After graduating in 1969, Dr. Brennan began working at various pharmaceutical companies. His first job was as a clinical researcher at Pfizer. Here, too, he faced accusations of trying to conduct unauthorized experiments, violating test protocols, and testing unauthorized substances. He was fired after 2 years. Later, he was also dismissed from major firms like Johnson & Johnson, Merck, and Bristol-Myers Squibb for similar reasons. With each dismissal, Dr. Brennan became more radicalized and uncontrolled. By 1975, Dr. Brennan had been blacklisted in the pharmaceutical industry. No major company would hire him. His name was associated with unethical behavior. It was precisely during this period that the Millbrook Valley opportunity arose. The town's old doctor, Dr. Harold Wilson, had retired, and the town council was looking for a new doctor. When Dr. Brennan applied, his strong CV and big city experience made him an attractive candidate. The town council was unaware of Dr. Brennan's past problems. Information sharing in the 1970s wasn't as easy as today. Reference checking was limited. Dr. Brennan presented himself as an idealistic doctor who wanted to get away from big city rush and serve the people. The people of Millbrook Valley welcomed him with great enthusiasm. For Dr. Brennan, Millbrook Valley was the perfect laboratory environment. Isolated, without external oversight, ideal experimental grounds where no one would suspect and where he had access to all his patients. His first task after acquiring the clinic was to set up the secret laboratory. Months of secret construction work was carried out at night. Materials were brought secretly, and no one was informed of this room's existence. The equipment found in the laboratory was extremely advanced. There was technology that would be considered very modern for the 1970s and 80s. Electronic microscopes, centrifuge machines, chemical analysis devices. How he obtained this equipment would be a separate mystery for the FBI doctor. Brennan had obtained them using old business connections, sometimes stealing, sometimes buying from the black market, sometimes through fake orders. What the FBI found in the deep freezer was even more horrifying. Human tissues, organ samples, blood specimens, all labeled, dated, with subject numbers written. Dr. Brennan saved body fluids and tissue samples from his patients after each experiment. Some labels had familiar names: Tommy Morrison, age 5, growth hormone experiment; Betty Wilson, age 34, neurological agent test; Lisa Patterson, newborn, development modification. Sarah Brennan's role was explained in detail in the files. Sarah wasn't just an innocent nurse. She was an accomplice who played an active role in her husband's experiments, sometimes suggesting her own ideas. She mostly conducted tests on patients, observed reactions, and recorded results. In notes she kept in her own handwriting, there were cold-blooded comments like, "Subject cried too much, dose should be increased." Tommy and Lisa Brennan also knew the family secret, but didn't fully understand it due to their young age. A composition Tommy wrote at age 9 was found, "My dad makes patients better, but sometimes he makes them cry." Mom says this is for their own good. In Lisa's drawings, people lay in beds with Dr. Brennan giving them injections. The evening of March 8th, 1984, was a critical turning point. That day, Dr. Brennan had received a letter from Pittsburgh. The letter came from the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Federal agents had been informed that death rates in Millbrook Valley had risen abnormally, that patients treated by Dr. Brennan were dying more than expected. The FDA was notifying that they would begin investigating Dr. Brennan. Dr. Brennan had panicked. He began cleaning the secret laboratory, trying to destroy evidence. But it was too late. FBI agents would be coming within a few days. That night, he had an emergency meeting with his family. Sarah and the children had already been making escape plans for a long time. Tommy and Lisa knew their father was different, but didn't understand the truth was this horrifying. The Brennan family packed their belongings that night, withdrew money, and prepared fake identity documents. Dr. Brennan had been preparing for this moment for years. He had fake identities in Canada, useful connections, places to hide. They left home at 3 a.m., got in the Buick, and left the town forever. The fate of the Brennan family was revealed following the FBI investigation. They first went to Michigan, then Minnesota, then crossed the Canadian border to Ontario. Dr. Brennan took the identity Dr. Robert Miller. Sarah became Susan Miller. Tommy and Lisa grew up as the Miller siblings. They lived with these identities for 40 years. Dr. Brennan had continued his experiments in Canada, too. He opened a small clinic and began testing on patients again. But as he aged, he became more cautious and secretive. In the 1990s, Sarah developed cancer and died in 2021. Tommy and Lisa tried to build normal lives but were crushed under the weight of their past. Thanks to the FBI's 2024 investigation, it was determined that Dr. Robert Miller was Dr. Michael Brennan. Canadian police arrested the 80-year-old doctor. Brennan in Toronto. He was now a sick, weak, trembling man, but mentally he was still sharp, his manipulative personality intact. Tommy and Lisa Brennan, now known as Robert and Elizabeth Miller, cooperated with the FBI after their father's arrest. "We are victims too," they said. "We couldn't understand our father's true face as children." As we grew up, we grasped the horror but couldn't escape. Both were receiving psychological support, trying to overcome their trauma. Dr. Brennan showed no remorse during FBI interrogation. "These were necessary sacrifices for science," he kept repeating. "Medicine will advance thanks to these experiments." "I am a pioneering researcher." He came out normal in mental health examination. He had committed his crimes completely consciously and in a planned manner. When the people of Millbrook Valley learned the truth, they experienced the collective shock. The Dr. Brennan they had loved, missed, and even considered erecting a statue for 40 years had actually used them as experimental mice. Half the town had been delivered by Dr. Brennan. Almost everyone had been his patient. The Pennsylvania Department of Health urgently launched a special health screening program for Millbrook Valley. Everyone who had been Dr. Brennan's patient between 1969 and 1984 was called for free comprehensive health checks. The results were frightening. Abnormal gene mutations, chronic disease rates, and neurological disorders in the town's population were twice the national average. Those in the most dramatic situation were the babies delivered by Dr. Brennan. 65% of these children had various developmental disorders detected: learning difficulties, behavioral disorders, autoimmune diseases, signs of premature aging. Dr. Brennan had injected experimental substances into babies while delivering them and observed their growth. Tommy Morrison was now 43 years old, but his mental capacity had remained at 12 years old. "My mother always said, 'Tommy is a bit special,'" he told FBI agents. "I tried to go to school but couldn't learn. Now I know why. Dr. Brennan made me a guinea pig." Lisa Henderson's story was more tragic. Dr. Brennan had given her special vitamins when she was 5 years old. In adulthood, she developed various types of cancer, experienced bone loss, her immune system collapsed, and she died at 32. Her family believed Dr. Brennan's experiments had caused her early death. The FBI investigation also revealed Dr. Brennan's other accomplices. Town pharmacist Robert Martinez was the person who supplied Dr. Brennan's experimental drugs. He prepared fake documents at the federal level and brought controlled substances through illegal channels. Martinez had been hiding in Florida since 1985. Town veterinarian Dr. Susan Parker was also part of the gang. She supplied chemicals used in animal experiments and provided materials to be used in Dr. Brennan's laboratory. Parker had also left town in 1984 and fled to Iceland. By the end of 2024, the FBI operation was completed. Dr. Michael Brennan began to be tried on 127 separate charges: first-degree murder, human experimentation, medical malpractice, fraud, document forgery. Despite being 80 years old, he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Justice had finally been served. Millbrook Valley is now trying to live with Dr. Brennan's horrific legacy. The townspeople are attending group therapy, getting support from trauma specialists, trying to overcome past pains. Dr. Brennan's old clinic was completely demolished and a modern health center was built in its place. But no one wants to be treated on that land. The new health center built in place of the clinic was named Millbrook Valley Community Health Center. The doctors working here are specially trained, certified in patient rights, and constantly supervised. No one trusts their doctor without question anymore. Everyone follows every treatment process. The Brennan case became one of the darkest examples in modern medical history. The most extreme example of how dangerous doctors who violate the Hippocratic Oath and ignore the first do no harm principle can be. The American Medical Association made this case a case study and began teaching it in all medical schools across the country. When Dr. Michael Brennan, his wife Sarah, and children Tommy and Lisa fled Millbrook Valley in 1984, they had become legends. When they were caught in 2024, it was revealed they were nightmares. The perfect doctor, who had been missed for 40 years, turned out to be a monster who harmed patients. The Brennan case went down in history as the most striking example of how trust can be abused and how medical authority can be misused. The people of Millbrook Valley will carry the traces of this trauma for their entire lives. The victims. Dr. Brennan, harmed under the mask of healing, will never fully recover. But the truth came out. Justice was served. Dr. Michael Brennan is no longer a patient. He's a prisoner. And in Millbrook Valley, doctors who truly believe in the first do no harm principle and respect the Hippocratic Oath now work. The town's wounds will heal over time, but Brennan's name will be remembered forever as a black stain.